Hey everyone, thank y'all for joining us for our Beef Brunch news update on Tuesday, March 8th. If you're a regular to listening to these or watching them, we are going to kind of change things up just a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jason so he can get us kicked off.
All right, thank you, ma'am. While I'm talking, I'm going to let me mute this phone. I'm going to try to share my screen real quick. And all right, are y'all looking at the drought monitor?
Yes, sir.
Thought we'd pull this up and take a look at it again. It hadn't changed a great deal since we looked at it last time, but I thought this might be a pretty good time. So, just to talk about the weather condition and field conditions in northeast Louisiana, the last rainfall that we got was just a very little bit, and the last decent rainfall we got and ranged from a half inch in some spots all the way up to 3+ inches the further you got over towards the Mississippi River. It definitely helped. But if you look at the drought monitor, it really didn't get us out of the situation that we're in terms of some pretty intense drought that we're looking at. And I guess the reason I bring this up, and I don't try to bring insult to injury, is we we know we're probably already going to be short on forages in terms of our cool season forages and long term our warm season forages just because of the price of fertilizer and fuel. So we know we're probably already looking at shortages there. But then you compound that with drought and those uncontrollable factors that that play into our yields, and we're probably looking at some pretty decent, pretty large decreases in yields in terms of grazing land and also hay production going forward. And across all three of our regions, we've got a large number of folks now that are fooling with cool season baleages, particularly ryegrass baleage. We know that we're probably going to see some yield reductions there. There's been a lot of fertilizer. The folks that could make it pencil out, there's been a good bit of fertilizer go out on some of that cool season um, forage, some of that ryegrass, and it's definitely greened it up, but it's way behind where it normally is this time of year. So I'm going to go back here and get back to the national map. So we've talked about this a little bit in the past in terms of a large portion of our calves from down here. When we say calves, we're talking those 500, 550s. They go to this region out here in the panhandle of Oklahoma, the panhandle of Texas, over into New Mexico. Some will go up into Kansas, but a large portion of the cattle here go to those areas to graze before they go onto the feedlot, getting that good, inexpensive gain of being turned out on some high quality grass, and then they'll graze those up until they time to go to the feed yard. So when you look at all these deep reds and maroons out here in some of these huge grazing land areas, that's gonna and has had and going to continue to have effect on our calf prices down here, because the further they have to truck those to get to high quality grazing lands, the more it's going to cost those folks to ship them up there. Especially whenever you're talking about diesel prices now, well over $4 a gallon. It's definitely going to play into the fact of um, we're probably going to see some discounts on some of those calves just because of the distance that they're going to have to go to grass with them. So I thought this might have been a good time to just review that and talk a little bit about the drought situation that we're still in. So uh, folks that have drought insurance have most of them have already gotten at least one payment from on drought insurance, which is a good thing. Most likely, they will probably get another one for January and February. Most folks have already gotten one for November and December, and most likely they'll be getting another one for January and February. I'm going to switch over now. Did that switch over to the PowerPoint, Ashley? Okay. So the there's the news cycle right now is just dominated about what's taking place in Ukraine, and I thought it would be good for us to visit a little bit about why corn prices have jumped up so much. And if you followed any of the wheat prices, you know that wheat prices have really jumped up as well. So these are two charts I think that put it in a pretty good perspective for us. So the first one over here on the left is corn. And I've got a spot down there where it's highlighted that Ukraine has been the dominant supplier of corn to China. So anytime you start, you say China and food and shortages in the same sentence, it's going to start causing disruptions just because of the large population of China. And they do not have a large capability of being able to feed that population without a lot of exports of food coming into that country. So whenever you start talking about Ukraine, over the past 25 years has become a major player of corn to China. China's going to be looking elsewhere for that corn, and Brazil and Argentina both coming out of some pretty major droughts. They have not had the yields in that part of the country that they are accustomed to. So we're looking at some supply shortages of corn, so therefore we're well over $7 a bushel, as we'll see in just a minute when we talk about the markets. And then over on the right-hand side, you see that Russia's export share of wheat just dominates all of those other countries in terms of the amount of wheat that they export out. So that right there is why wheat has really skyrocketed as well. And a lot of these commodities are moved through that Black Sea region where they've just about shut off those ports, and they are unable to move a lot of those commodities through that region. So that right there is why those two particular, and there's other ones, but these two particularly are the ones that come to the forefront, that we've seen some pretty major jumps in prices since this conflict started. And I'm going to stop sharing now. We'll get into some of the other markets. Did that quit sharing, Ashley? Okay, all right. So, and there's a lot of things right now that are directly affecting the crop markets, like we just talked about in terms of corn and wheat, and those are understandable whenever you talk about simple supply and demand fundamentals. So how do we apply that to the cattle market? And the fed cattle market, in my opinion, and if you look at just the way that it has, a lot of it has reacted over the last year or so with all of these black swan events, is just it's reacting because of uncertainty. And corn really doesn't have a whole lot to do with a fat steer or a fat heifer because they've already been fed out. But whenever you put as much uncertainty and instability and unpredictability into these markets, they're all going to react. And so whenever you talk about oil as high as it is now, the last time I looked at it today, it was like 117 a barrel. It may be even higher than that now. I hadn't looked at it since earlier this morning. But and you talk about corn over $7 a bushel, and then all of the geopolitical uncertainty. All of our publicly traded markets are in dire need of that stability. So that's why we've gotten some pretty good changes in our fat cattle market. So the feeder cattle market is reacting pretty much solely to what corn is doing, just because there's so much of that feeding that still has to take place into that feeder calf. They are going to react pretty quickly anytime corn starts moving around the way it is right now. Looking at our slaughter volumes for the week, they were 658,000 head, which is up from last week's 647,000 head, but a little short of where we were this time a year ago, which was 666,000 head. Choice box beef cutout values continued their downward spiral, closing the week at $255.72 a hundred, which is down $5.10 a hundred from the previous week. Was a choice select spread of $5.22, which is up $3.28 from the previous week. As reported in the National Weekly Direct Slaughter Cattle Report of negotiated purchases on a confirmed 75,674 head. For the week in the Southern Plains, trading was slow on moderate demand. For the week in the Texas Panhandle, live purchases traded $2 lower at 140. For the week in Kansas, live purchases ranged 138 to 141, which is mostly $2 lower at 140. In Nebraska, trading was slow on moderate demand, and for the week, live purchases traded mostly $2 to $4 lower at 140, with a few up to 142. In the Western Corn Belt on Wednesday, trading was slow on moderate demand, while Thursday saw slow trade on light to moderate demand. So for the Western Corn Belt, for the week, live purchases ranged 140 to 143, mostly $2 lower at 142. Futures market settlements ended the week. So the week ending March the 4th, with April down $2.57 at 135.77, June down $2.62 at 132.52, and August down $1.50 at 134.15. So if you look at those futures markets in terms of the opening of the week and the close of the week, they did close about $5 lower on Friday than what they opened at on Monday. So that would have been Monday, February the 28th. 5 to 600 pound steers, medium and large, ones and twos, sold between 169 and 180, $2 to $4 lower when compared to the previous week. So our calf market has not been hurt too bad. Some of this is just like I said a while ago, it's just a lot of uncertainty. But we'll see in just a minute. Our feeder cattle market has taken the biggest hit. 700 pound feeder steers, medium and large ones and twos, so 131 to 151, which is $3 to $13 lower when compared to the previous week. Futures market settlements ended the week down hard, with April trading down $3.27 at 157.25. May down $3.15 at 162.35, and August down $2.62 at 176.10. So I always try to find a little rainbow or a little pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. I've said that before, that my glass is always half full. Cull cows still remain very good. I'll say this again. We've said it numerous times. If you've got some cull cows that you've been hanging on to because the market has just not been there for them, you need to pay attention to this, especially if you've got some that are in some decent flesh. They're not super thin coming out of the winter. There is definitely some value in those cull cows right now. So average yielding lean cull cows, that's a body condition score less than 4. So that would be what we call thin cows. Ended up the week 3 cents higher at 71 cents a pound. High yielding lean cull cows finished the week at 77 cents a pound. So breakers, that's our high body condition score, so a 7 or greater, finished the week 82 cents to 90 cents. That's up 3 to 7 cents from the previous week. And then boning utility, so that's those in that moderate body condition score, approximately a 5 or 6. They are at 82 cents to 98 cents, which is steady to 16 cents higher than the previous week. Y'all, I'm going to just tell you that I did see some on the Oklahoma City report that went over $1. So there's definitely some value in those kill cows right now. So, and everybody's been asking what these fertilizer prices are doing. So I just pulled a few. These are just general numbers. So UAN up about 118%, 3300 up about 88% based on last year this same time. Urea is up about 95%, and last week, so we don't have this week's numbers yet for whenever this report comes out. So we're still talking about the week ending March 4th. Farm diesel fuel 48 cents above, 48% above where we were this time last year. I can tell you that has gone up dramatically for this week. I've already heard some numbers, and we're well over $4 for farm diesel as well, uh, uh, moving forward. So, and that number is going to go up. We realize that. On our feedstuff, soybean meal is up $20.60 at $494.40 a ton. Soybean hulls are steady at $170 a ton. Rice bran steady at $195 a ton. Cottonseed meal steady at $342.50 a ton. Whole cottonseed up $20 at $330 a ton. DDGs up $20.42 at $296.67 a ton, and corn up 9 cents a bushel at $7.21 a bushel. And with that, I'm going to shut up and turn it back to you.
All right, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and I'll turn it over to Vince. If you would like to do our Central South Louisiana update, please, sir.
Yeah, thank y'all for having me. It's been a good weather week here in Central and South Louisiana. Last week on Friday, a week ago Friday, we had roughly about half to 3/4 of an inch in areas with the frontal passage. That was very beneficial. Here recently, I visited with some friends down along the coast. It's remarkably dry in the marshes. They're not able to graze cattle. They're not even able to conduct what they normally do as far as their normal day-to-day routine down there, whether it's trapping or taking care of. They just have no water. So, and as Jason's map showed with the drought monitor, that's indicative of what's going on, because it shows a severe drought from eastern Cameron Parish into Acadia Parish and over the Vermilion, north of Vermilion Bay. So that very much tells the story, and that's the report we're getting. So I'm a little bit further north in central, in above Acadia and Evangeline, St. Landry, Allen. It shows to be into a moderate drought. So we are very dry. Over the winter period, fall and winter period, we probably have had less than 2 inches of rain through the whole time frame. So very much a struggle, and we had numerous nights of 20-degree weather throughout the winter period. That ryegrass just struggled both from drought and from dehydration, from the lack of soil moisture, so to speak. So with that being said, it's a challenge. With the fertilizer increase in prices, I personally purchased some to top dress some of my grass on the day before the conflict began, and I called back the next day where I do business, and they said it had gone up $150 overnight. So it's just a real challenge for people to make good decisions about spending money going forward, and the fear of a eroding calf market as we're cow-calf operators, and most people rely on their calf market to generate the income that's necessary for their production, or production needs and expenses. So it's going to be a real interesting year, and I sit in a heavy crop area. There's a lot of speculation whether we're going to have some change in acres from whether it be rice, which is highly dependent on nitrogen. Corn is highly dependent on nitrogen. But all those commodity prices are up. Sugarcane as well, highly dependent on nitrogen. But they had a good sugarcane harvest this year. It was real easy going, no ruts, not a lot of maintenance following the harvest. So be interesting to see moving forward some product in regards to ag chemicals and the chemistry side of ag production. Some of these products are not even available to grow crops as we've known it in the past. So, Roundups in the $50 a gallon range, where it had been in the around $30 for the last several years. Even your generics, farmers are really hesitant about this burn down. They're moving forward, but it's going to be at a different pace and at a different angle to try to make a crop this year. So, as far as the local cattle market, again, as I mentioned, there's a lot of speculation and a lot of uncertainty on how to approach what the necessaries are and moving forward and to stay in business, because it's going to be a true challenge. So, and as Jason said, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow is that the kill cow market is still pretty strong, and those who need to liquidate some non-productive cows or take older cattle out the herd to try to absorb some of this high cost of production, it might be a good time to do that. So about all I have here. It's just been drouthy and dry, and they're calling for a chance of rain. Cool front came through this morning. We're going to back up as a warm front with an 80-90% chance of rain tomorrow. So hopefully we get some of that rainfall.
Thank you, sir. Lee, will rotate over to you for our Northwest region update, please.
Thank you, Ashley. Very glad to be with you all here today. As far as weather goes up in our part of the world, we finally got some acceptable growing conditions, I would say, i.e. some warmer temperatures and warmer nighttime lows. Recall at the first of this talk how Jason pulled up that drought monitor. We did see some slight improvements in part of northwest Louisiana as far as our drought conditions. Still have some D3 areas in a couple of the parishes, and they're still kind of hanging in there. It's going to take more significant rain to do a lot of good in our part of the world. Going back through some old pictures at my personal place, just looking at this time of year, going back, year, 2 years, 3 years, wow, what a difference. It really puts it into perspective how far back we are at this stage. We need a lot of rain, and it's got a lot of people. I think I've said this before on this news update. It's got a lot of people calling into mind 2011, the year, the record drought year here. And there are some similarities. I'm not trying to scare anybody, but there are some, I guess you would say, similarities in the year. We hope that this will reverse itself and that we'll continue to see some improvements. But checking the weather just a few hours ago, and it's been holding on for several days now, they're calling for us to get down into the mid-20s by Thursday and Friday of this week, and that's really going to set these winter forages back. We might could tolerate one night of it, but it's looking like it's going to be 2 nights of it, and that's really going to kind of put a damper on our spring forage growth. It continues to be kind of a sad song for those with calves turned out or yearlings turned out on this ryegrass or other winter pastures. Folks are getting tired of feeding them. They're having to supplement with hay, having to make some of those hard decisions right now. And all these market factors that Jason did such a good job alluding to are just putting another pressure on them, because there's kind of a general consensus that everybody may have missed out on the high point that we had. I guess that was a couple of weeks ago. So we're looking forward to that, to some more rain, stability. I've answered quite a few calls on fertilizer, and I want to take just a minute to kind of reinforce something, and that's in these times of high input prices like this, one, you see a lot of what I call snake oil hit the market. You wonder where some of these folks come from, but these businesses will pop up with some kind of miracle soil amendment that'll solve all your problems, and you can only put out 2 pounds per acre and get the same result as 30 units of nitrogen, and so on and so forth. Be careful with it. Whenever somebody's selling you something that's too good to be true, it may just be that. And run it by your local county agent. Give one of us a call if you got a question. If somebody's trying to sell you on something that may not be quite what you're used to, or maybe something new, or so on and so forth. And that leads to my other point that I'd kind of like to use this time to reinforce with you. And I've talked about it before. In times like this, where we're having to make these tough decisions, where like Vince and Jason were talking about, these fertilizer prices just astronomical, corn's just skyrocketing, diesel fuel just makes your head hurt when you look at the sign. Hard choices have to be made as far as the long-term viability of your operation. Now, I'm not saying that cut off all these things that cost you money, all these inputs, because you got to put something back into your operation for the long-term profitability. But you need to sit down with your family, if you're in a family business, or with the other people involved in your operation, and kind of look at some of these things and prioritize between these various inputs what needs the most attention on your operation, whether it be your weed control program, your fertility, gosh, even the cost of equipment and squeeze chutes, now might not be the right year to go in and look at a brand new hay baler. Maybe you can put that off and put some more money towards your fertilizer program. A lot of people around here are sweating bullets, so to speak, about the hay supplies right now and hay supplies in the coming year, because they know that they may not be able to fertilize up to what they need for their fullest yield and best quality. But they're in a jam also because of the tight winter we've had and the fact that hay stocks are running short. I talked to a guy this morning. He was saying he had plenty of hay early in the winter and just knew he was going to be all right, going to have a large carryover, and now it's kind of coming into question. He might be lucky to get by to squeak out the winter and have enough hay without buying any. So I think that's kind of the general sentiment amongst a lot of cattle producers in the northwest part of the state, at least. There's some cattle being marketed. We continue to see that. I think the term a lot of folks are using now is kind of a fire sale, trying to get some of these cattle going, especially these bigger cattle. And the bright spot, as I mentioned earlier, is these killing cow prices. And we've talked about it once, we've talked about it 100 times, and you're finna hear it for the 101st time. If you've got these older, unproductive cows that are in pretty good shape, you might consider offloading them. If they're a problem cow, get them gone. Take advantage of this, realize that, it's much tougher to make a culling decision on a cow whenever you're sitting at 25, 30 cents a pound, even 40 cents a pound. But once you get to knocking on that 75, 80, even 90 in some special cases, and definitely on bulls, it might be time to definitely offload. And think about it also, not only to take advantage of the uptick that we're continue to see on these killing cow prices. Think about reducing the need for available forage moving forward, and if you're having to cut down on your fertilizer bill, naturally by removing those unproductive mouths, you're going to free up more forage for those more productive members of your herd, so to speak. So with that, Ashley, I guess I'd like to conclude with one final kudos. Our colleague on the call with us there, Mr. Desatel, they hit a real good lick this last week there with the grand champion Brayford bull at the Houston Livestock Show. And if you've ever been to that show, that's saying something. Anytime you can win a class down there, that's saying something. But to have a grand champion down there, we're pretty proud of him and proud for him and his girls. They do an excellent job with their show cattle herd and their commercial cattle herd. And I just want to publicly say congratulations to old Vince there.
Thank you. And was it division champion heifer, Vince, as well?
Yeah, we had a division champion heifer as well.
We got to brag on you just for a second.
Thank you, guys. A lot of work, a lot of dedication.
Like Lee said, congratulations to Emily and Ellen too for that.
Thank you.
So I'll wrap us up. I had a few notes jotted down, and I think all the guys probably touched on most of them. So as they've said, we're a broken record, and we'll say we're a broken record. But one thing that I know, if you've heard some of my talks, specifically on the reproduction side, but I think that it falls into the management scheme in general, is to control what you can. And I think Lee and Jason and Vince have all done a great job touching on that today. Lee just said to prioritize your inputs, and that's just another way of saying that. Go in and look and, cut your costs, but don't cut your corners. So those mouths that are costing you money and not making you money, those need to go. And the guys have said, this is probably the time to do it if you can get rid of those cows. I'll echo what all three of them have said in terms of that. I was with Stan Dutil in Opelousas this past week, and he does a breeding sinus exam day for his producers in the spring and in the fall. And so in doing that, I want to mention this because Jason and I talked about it this morning as well. We talk about getting breeding sinus exams done on those bulls to make sure that they are good and fertile and ready to go. Make sure that they are going to perform at their best, because even a subfertile bull might give you some calves, but is he going to give you as many calves as he should? And so think about the impact that the bulls have there. And we preach to do a breeding soundness exam, at least 60 to 75 days, 90 days before you turn them out. But I will say that it is never too late to get the bull checked unless it's after the breeding season. So anytime, I don't care if it's the day you plan to turn him out, 2 days before, whatever, go ahead and get your bull checked. Make sure that he's going to work for you, because you want to make sure that you're going to get enough calves on the ground. Those of you that are still prepping for the breeding season, like we're talking about, there are some small inputs that you can do in terms of estrus synchronization, even if you're turning a bull out, not using AI, but you can still synchronize and get a more uniform calf crop, just in terms of when those calves hit the ground. Helps you with labor. We've done a few videos on that as well. So there's just different things. Exactly what Lee just said. Sit down with whoever it is you work with on your operation, and look at what you've got coming forward, because you don't want to be, into the summer and things hopefully don't get worse. But if they do get worse, and as Lee said, if it turns into 2011 all over again, it's going to be tough. So just be proactive. Do all of that now. Start thinking about that now. Prioritize now. It doesn't mean you have to jump into action right now, but make a game plan going forward into the next few months, the next 6 months. So that being said, some events that we've got coming up. We've mentioned all of them, but I'm going to throw them all back out there again. So today, when this video goes out on March 8th, Jason and Lee are doing a basic marketing strategies webinar. I think that touches on, or I'm assuming they're going to plan on touching on everything that we've been saying here. We get questions all the time about the best ways to market your calves. And so y'all go in and think about those strategies. It's very timely, and I think it's going to be great. So they are going to be live at 10:30 a.m. today, Tuesday, March 8th. So we hope that you can join them live. That way you can ask them questions, but if not, it will be recorded and I will get it up as soon as I can onto our YouTube channel. Saturday, March 12th, this Saturday, is the Acadiana Field Day. I've mentioned that before. It's at the Iberia Research Station in Jeanerette. Registration is at 8 a.m. The program starts at 8:30 and goes until 1, and they will have lunch and door prizes and all the fun stuff. So I'll put more information on that in the description. The Dean Lee Beef and Forage Field Day is on Thursday, April 21st. We're going to do registration at 2:30 and kick off at 3. We will provide supper for that. So we're going to have talks on benefits of using clover during the winter pasture systems. Dr. Strahan's coming in talking about controlling broadleaf weeds inside clover fields, looking at doing a baleage demonstration, talking about producing and feeding baleage and the benefits of that, improving record keeping, and doing a demonstration on some tagging and some EIDs. We'll have a cattle market update, and we'll have the vendors and everybody there as well. And then the following week on Thursday, April 28th, will be our Northwest Region Field Day. That will be at the Red River Station in Bossier. We're starting at 8:30, I believe, and we will go through and do that. So you'll have some of the same talks there regarding the clovers and weed control for clovers. We're also going to do the EID demo and record keeping talk there as well. And then we're going to have a marketing talk. So I think we're doing a producer panel, or having a panel of some producers and some agents. They're going to come in and do a marketing talk there at lunchtime. So mark your calendar for all of those. If you can make them, that's great. The last thing that I will mention, and Lee's mentioned it before, I don't think it's filled up yet, but we have our artificial insemination class at the Hill Farm coming. That is going to be April 6th through the 8th. If you have questions on that event, if you're interested in it, reach out to Lee or me, and we will get you the information for that. And I believe that that's all that we have coming forward. Still praying, crossing our fingers from some rain, and hoping some of these input prices drop a little bit and cattle prices go up. So we will be back with y'all in a couple of weeks.